Get out of here, sweetheart. Go back to filing paperwork where you belong. Marcus Holloway's voice cut through the equipment room like a blade. His boot caught Sarah Chen's ankle mid-step, deliberate, vicious, sending her crashing down the concrete stairs. The crack of her shoulder hitting stone echoed. 12 trainees laughed. No one moved to help. Sarah lay there, silent, collecting her scattered gear with hands that didn't shake. But 3 stories above, in the observation tower's darkened glass, Deputy Director Morrison's coffee cup hit the floor. He'd seen that breathing pattern before. Baghdad, under mortar fire. His hand was already reaching for the phone. "Get me 2 more deputy directors," he said, his voice cold as death. "Authorization code red. We're locking down this entire base." The equipment room smelled like rubber and old sweat. Sarah Chen stood at her assigned locker, number 47, the last one in the row. Always the last. She'd been at Quantico for 6 weeks now, and the pattern was as predictable as it was calculated. "You need help with that, honey?" Marcus Holloway's voice came from behind her, dripping with false concern. "Those harnesses can be tricky for someone your size." Sarah's fingers didn't pause, and she threaded the climbing harness through the buckle. "I'm fine, thank you." "Just trying to be helpful." Marcus leaned against the locker beside hers, arms crossed over a chest that suggested too many hours at the gym and not enough in the field. "Some of us actually want everyone to succeed here." His friend Jackson snorted from across the room. "Come on, man. We all know how this ends. She'll wash out by month 3 like the last 2. "The last 3, corrected Amanda Preston, the only woman in Marcus's inner circle, which somehow made her participation in the cruelty worse. "Remember that girl from Michigan? Cried during the firearms qualification?" Sarah pulled the harness tight, tested the buckles, said nothing. Her silence was a well she'd learned to draw from deep. 6 years in Syria, Yemen, places that didn't officially exist on any mission report, had taught her that words were often wasted ammunition. "You know what I think?" Marcus pushed off the locker, circling closer. "I think you're in over your head, Chen. I think you got here on some diversity checkbox, and now you're too proud to admit you don't belong." The equipment room had gone quiet. 14 other trainees were watching now, waiting to see how this played out. Some looked uncomfortable. None intervened. Sarah shouldered her gear bag, met Marcus's eyes for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to acknowledge him, not long enough to challenge, and walked toward the door. "That's what I thought," Marcus called after her. "Run away. It's what you're good at." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded to her like a small victory. Outside, the Virginia morning was crisp and clear. October at Quantico meant the leaves were turning, the air sharp enough to sting your lungs on the first breath. Sarah walked across the quad toward the obstacle course, her boots crunching on gravel, her heartbeat steady at 62 beats per minute. She'd checked that morning, like she checked every morning. Baseline normal, no elevated stress response. The obstacle course loomed ahead, 40 feet of rope walls, cargo nets, balance beams, and the final challenge, a 70-foot rappel tower that had broken more than one trainee's nerve. "Trainee Chen," Instructor Davis called from the base of the tower. He was old-school FBI, 30 years in, with a face like worn leather and eyes that missed nothing. "You're up first today." "Yes, sir." "Harness check." Sarah presented herself for inspection. Davis's hands were quick and professional, tugging each strap, testing each buckle. He paused at the main carabiner, frowned, adjusted something, moved on. "You're good. Get climbing." The tower was cold steel and peeling paint. Sarah started up the ladder, her breathing measured, her focus narrow. This was the part of training she actually enjoyed, the pure physicality of it, the problem-solving of body mechanics and weight distribution. No politics here, No legacy admissions. Just you and gravity and the question of whether you'd prepared enough. Below, the other trainees gathered. She could hear Marcus's voice, loud and performative. $20 says she freezes at the top. You're on, Jackson replied. I say she makes it halfway down and then panics. Sarah reached the platform. 70 feet up, the world looked different, smaller. The people below were just shapes and colors. She clipped into the rappel line, checked her carabiner twice, old habits from operations where equipment failure meant more than just a failed grade, and positioned herself at the edge. On belay, she called down. Belay on, Instructor Davis's voice came back. Rappelling! Rappel on! Sarah leaned back into the harness, felt the rope take her weight, and stepped backward off the platform. The first 10 feet were smooth, textbook technique. Push off, control the descent, land light, repeat. She could do this in her sleep, had done it in her sleep during those weird training dreams that still visited her sometimes. 20 feet down. 30. That's when she felt it. A subtle wrongness in the harness. A shift in pressure that shouldn't be there. 40 feet. The main support strap was loosening. Not catastrophically, not yet. But wrong. Definitely wrong. She looked down. Marcus was staring up at her, and even from this distance, she could see his expression. Not concerned. Anticipatory. The realization hit her in the same moment the harness failed. He'd tampered with her equipment during the inspection. That pause. That adjustment Davis had made. Marcus must have loosened it beforehand, knowing the instructor would tighten it. But not enough. Not if the initial sabotage was subtle enough. The harness gave way with a sound like a sigh. Sarah had perhaps 1 second of true weightlessness. 1 second where training, instinct, and 6 years of live combat experience collided into a single imperative. Protect the head, protect the spine, turn the fall into something survivable. She twisted, tucked, tried to grab the rope. The impact drove the air from her lungs and the thought from her mind. The world came back in pieces. Sky, voices, pain in her left shoulder that was sharp and specific, the metallic taste of adrenaline. Jesus Christ. Don't move her. Get the medic. Told you she wasn't ready. Sarah's eyes focused. She was on her back on the crash mat, which had probably saved her life, but felt like it was made of concrete. Her gear was scattered around her. The rope hung above, swaying slightly, the failed harness dangling uselessly. Marcus's face appeared above her, his expression a mask of theatrical concern. Jen! Oh my God, are you okay? That harness must have been defective. His eyes told a different story. They were bright with something that might have been excitement, might have been satisfaction. Sarah tried to speak, but her lungs were still remembering how to work. Someone get Instructor Davis, Marcus was saying, loud enough for everyone to hear. This is serious. This is a major equipment failure. Other faces crowded in. Amanda looked genuinely shocked. Jackson looked scared. A few others just looked like they were witnessing something they'd later describe in hushed tones in the cafeteria. Instructor Davis pushed through the crowd, dropped to one knee beside her. Jen, can you hear me? Don't try to move. Medic's coming. Sarah managed a breath, then another. Her shoulder was screaming, but she'd dislocated shoulders before. Syria. During an exfil gone bad. This was manageable. I'm okay, she whispered. You're not okay. You just fell 40 feet. 30, Sarah corrected, her voice getting stronger. 40 feet would have been worse. A laugh rippled through the crowd, nervous and relieved. Don't try to be a hero, Davis said, but there was something in his eyes, a reassessment happening in real time. The medic arrived, a no-nonsense woman named Torres, who immediately took command.
Everyone back. Give her space. Chen, I'm going to check your vitals. Tell me if anything feels wrong.
Sarah lay still while professional hands probed and checked. Shoulder definitely dislocated. Possible bruised ribs, scrapes and contusions. But nothing broken. Nothing that wouldn't heal. "We need to transport you to medical," Torres said finally. "That shoulder needs imaging." "I can walk." "I'm sure you can. You're still riding in the ambulance." As they loaded her onto the stretcher, Sarah's eyes found Marcus in the crowd. He was standing back now, arms crossed, watching. Their gazes met for just a moment. His face was neutral, carefully neutral. But she saw it. The calculation, the satisfaction, the absolute certainty that he'd just ended her career at Quantico before it had truly begun. Sarah closed her eyes and let them wheel her away. In the observation tower, Deputy Director Morrison had watched the entire sequence. He'd watched Marcus approach Sarah's locker earlier. The tower had security cameras everywhere, and Morrison had access to all of them. He'd watched the equipment room interaction. He'd seen Marcus's hand on the harness, so quick and subtle that even the camera barely caught it. And now he'd watched a trainee fall because of deliberate sabotage. He picked up his phone, dialed a number that bypassed every official channel. "It's Morrison. I need a file pulled. Classification level red. Authorization code Delta 77 Zulu." The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. "Name?" "Chen. Sarah Chen. Current status, FBI trainee, class 23B. But I need her real file, the one that requires triple authentication." A pause. "Sir, that level of clearance, I know what it requires. Get me Deputy Directors Hayes and Reeves. Tell them it's urgent. Tell them we have a situation at Quantico that requires immediate attention." "Yes, sir. What kind of situation?" Morrison watched the replay on his screen. Sarah hitting the ground, the scatter of equipment. Marcus's face, that flash of satisfaction before he remembered to look concerned. "The kind," Morrison said slowly, "where someone just made the worst mistake of their life, and they don't even know it yet." The medical facility at Quantico was efficient and sterile. Sarah lay on an examination table while a doctor she'd never met studied X-rays with a frown. "Dislocated shoulder, as suspected. Also some impressive bruising. You're lucky you didn't break anything." "Yes, sir." "I'm going to reduce the shoulder. It's going to hurt." "I understand." The doctor positioned himself, placed his hands with professional confidence. "On 3. 1. He pulled on 2. Old doctor's trick. The shoulder socket made a sound like a small branch breaking, and then the pain shifted from acute to manageable. Sarah didn't cry out, she just breathed through it, the way she'd learned to breathe through a knife wound in Aleppo, through a bullet graze in Kandahar, through things she couldn't discuss with anyone who didn't have the same security clearance. "Remarkable pain tolerance," the doctor observed, applying a sling. "Most people scream." "Most people haven't had much practice." He looked at her then. Really looked. "Where'd you serve?" The question hung in the air. Sarah met his eyes, made a decision. "I didn't, sir. I'm just a trainee." The doctor held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Of course, my mistake." He finished with the sling. "You'll need to rest this for at least 2 weeks. No training, no physical activity." "Sir, the gauntlet exercise is in 72 hours. Then you'll miss it. Doctor's orders." Sarah sat in the medical facility waiting room, her arm in a sling, and considered her options. She could report the sabotage. She could call it out. But what proof did she have? A feeling? An instinct? Marcus would deny it. The equipment would be examined and deemed defective.
She'd be labeled paranoid, bitter, looking for excuses. Or she could do what she'd done for 6 years in the field: adapt, observe, and wait for the right moment. "Trainee Chen?" She looked up. A young officer she didn't recognize stood in the doorway. "Deputy Director Morrison would like to see you. Now." Sarah stood, ignoring the pull in her shoulder. "Deputy Director Morrison is here?" "He's in the tower. He asked for you specifically." The walk across campus felt long. Other trainees stared. Word had spread fast. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked like they'd just seen their suspicions confirmed. She wasn't cut out for this. The observation tower was off limits to trainees. Sarah had never been inside. The officer led her up 3 flights of stairs to a room full of monitors and equipment that probably cost more than her hometown's annual budget. Deputy Director Morrison stood with his back to her, watching a replay on the main screen. It showed her fall from 3 different angles. "Sir?" Sarah said quietly. He didn't turn around. "How's the shoulder?" "Manageable, sir." "I imagine it is." He finally turned to face her. Morrison was in his late 50s, gray at the temples, with eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by much. "I watched it happen. All of it." Sarah's heartbeat ticked up exactly 3 beats. 65, still controlled. "The fall was unfortunate, sir. Equipment failure." "Don't." His voice was sharp. "Don't insult my intelligence, and don't insult yours." Silence filled the room. Morrison walked to his desk, picked up a tablet, held it out to her. "I've been watching you since you arrived, not because of who you pretend to be, because of who you actually are." Sarah took the tablet with her good hand. The screen showed a photograph, younger version of herself, in different uniform, different life. "I need to know something, Lieutenant Chen," Morrison said, using her real rank for the first time. "Are you planning to blow your cover? Are you going to report what that privileged little bastard did to you?" Sarah looked at the photo, then back at Morrison. "No, sir." "Why not?" "Because my mission isn't to expose one arrogant trainee. It's to assess the entire system. And what happened today," she gestured at the screens showing the obstacle course, "tells me everything I need to know about that system." A smile ghosted across Morrison's face. "I pulled your real file. Required authorization from 2 other deputy directors. Do you know what I found?" "Sir, 47 successful operations. 6 years in the field." "Decorations that would make a 4-star general jealous. And a psych evaluation that says you have, quote, an exceptional ability to maintain cover even under extreme duress." He paused. "Falling 40 feet counts as extreme duress, wouldn't you say?" 30 feet, sir." He laughed, short and sharp. "There it is. The attention to detail that makes you so damn good at your job." He moved closer, lowered his voice. "The gauntlet starts in 72 hours. The doctor says you can't participate." "Yes, sir." "But you're going to anyway." It wasn't a question. Sarah met his eyes. "I didn't come this far to miss the final examination because of a dislocated shoulder." Morrison nodded slowly. "Marcus Holloway's family has produced 3 FBI directors. His grandfather helped found the Academy's training program. He thinks that legacy makes him untouchable." "Everyone's touchable, sir. It's just a matter of finding the right pressure point." "And what's his?" Sarah thought about Marcus's face as she fell. That flash of satisfaction, the certainty that he'd won. "His arrogance," she said quietly. "He thinks he already knows everything. That makes him predictable." Morrison walked back to the window overlooking the obstacle course. 2 other deputy directors are arriving tonight. This thing you're doing, this assessment, it's bigger than you know.
We've suspected for years that the Academy has become more about connections than competence. But suspicion isn't proof. And you need proof. We need a catalyst. We need something so undeniable, so public, that change becomes inevitable. He turned back to her. Think you can give us that in 72 hours? Sarah looked down at her arm in the sling, felt the ache in her shoulder, thought about 6 years of operations where she'd had worse injuries and still completed the mission. Yes, sir. I can do that. Good. Morrison moved to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. One more thing, Lieutenant. When this is over, when your real identity comes out, that young man who sabotaged your harness is going to have his entire world destroyed. His career, his reputation, his family's legacy. All of it gone. Sarah considered this. Is that a warning, sir? It's a question. Can you live with that? She thought about the other trainees who'd watched her fall, the ones who'd looked uncomfortable but said nothing. The culture that had created Marcus Holloway and a dozen others like him, the system that valued pedigree over performance. I've lived with worse, sir. Morrison nodded, satisfied. 72 hours, Lieutenant. Show me what asymmetric warfare looks like when it comes home. The door closed behind him, leaving Sarah alone in the tower room. She walked to the window, looked down at the obstacle course where she'd fallen, where Marcus Holloway thought he'd broken her. Her good hand reached up, touched the sling, felt the throb of her shoulder. In Syria, she'd once completed a 40-mile exfil with a bullet wound in her leg. In Yemen, she'd talked her way past enemy checkpoints with 3 cracked ribs. This was just Tuesday. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time in 6 weeks. The game was about to change, and Marcus Holloway had no idea what was coming. The cafeteria that evening buzzed with speculation. Sarah sat alone at a corner table, her tray untouched, her arm still in the sling. 2 tables over, Marcus held court with his usual entourage. I'm telling you, the equipment was faulty, he was saying, loud enough for half the room to hear. Pure accident. Could have happened to anyone. Jackson nodded along. Lucky she wasn't killed. Lucky she's tough enough to take it, Amanda added, and Sarah couldn't tell if that was meant as a compliment or another dig. A shadow fell across Sarah's table. She looked up to find Instructor Davis standing there, holding his own tray. Mind if I sit? It's your cafeteria, sir. Davis sat anyway, his movements deliberate. He ate a forkful of something that might have been meatloaf, chewed, swallowed. Doc says you're cleared for the gauntlet, limited duty. Yes, sir. That shoulder's going to be a liability out there. I'll manage. Davis set down his fork, leaned forward slightly. You know what I think, Chen? I think you've been managing this whole time. Managing to stay average. Managing to stay invisible. Managing to look exactly like someone who doesn't belong here. Sarah's pulse didn't change. Sir, I've been teaching at this academy for 12 years. I've seen 1,000 trainees come through. Most of them are exactly what they appear to be. But every once in a while, he paused, his eyes sharp. Every once in a while, someone comes along who's too carefully average. You know what I mean? Sarah met his gaze. No, sir. Sure you don't. Davis picked up his fork again. The gauntlet starts at 0500. You're assigned to Omega Team. Lowest performers, worst equipment. Expected to lose within 24 hours. Your team leader is Trainee Rodriguez. Good kid, tries hard. No tactical sense whatsoever. Understood. One more thing. Davis's voice dropped. That harness you fell from? I inspected it personally after the incident. Someone with training, real training, had tampered with the release mechanism. Not enough for me to spot on a quick check, but enough to cause failure under load. Sarah's hand tightened on her water glass. "Are you saying—" "I'm not saying anything official, but if I were you, I'd watch my back during the gauntlet. Accidents happen out there, especially to people certain other trainees think don't belong." He stood, picked up his tray, and walked away without another word. Sarah sat very still, processing. Davis knew, or suspected, which meant others might too. The cover was thinner than she'd thought. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Tower, midnight, come alone." She deleted it immediately. The observation tower at midnight was dark except for a single desk lamp. Sarah climbed the stairs quietly, her shoulder protesting with each step. The door was unlocked. Inside, 3 people waited. Deputy Director Morrison, she knew. The other 2 were strangers, but their bearing told her everything. Senior leadership, the kind who made decisions that changed agencies. "Lieutenant Chen," Morrison said. "Deputy Directors Patricia Hayes and David Reeves." Hayes was a woman in her early 60s, steel gray hair pulled back severely, eyes like a raptor. Reeves was younger, maybe 50, with the build of someone who still ran every morning and the scars of someone who'd done more than push paper. "Sir, ma'am," Sarah said. "Relax, Lieutenant," Hayes said, her voice surprisingly warm. "This isn't an interrogation. Consider it a mission brief." Reeves gestured to a chair. Sarah sat, keeping her back straight despite the pain. Morrison pulled up footage on the main screen. "We've been reviewing your performance over the past 6 weeks. Your scores are perfectly calibrated to be unremarkable. Your physical assessments showed just enough competence to pass. Your tactical exams are deliberately average." "It's textbook undercover work," Hayes added, "which is exactly what concerns us. No one at this academy should be capable of that level of performance management. It requires training, discipline, and experience that no trainee should have." Sarah said nothing. "We pulled your full file," Reeves said. "It required triple authentication. What we found was—" He paused, searching for words. "Remarkable. And deeply concerning." "Sir? You're one of the most decorated field operatives in CIA special activities. Your record includes operations that most people in this building don't have clearance to know about. And you're here, pretending to be a struggling trainee, being bullied by a 26-year-old with a trust fund and a legacy admission." Hayes leaned forward. "What happened today wasn't an accident." "No, ma'am. Trainee Holloway sabotaged your equipment with the clear intent to injure or kill you." Sarah's jaw tightened. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a serious crime," Morrison said. "Attempted murder of a federal officer. If we wanted, we could have him in handcuffs within the hour." "But you won't." "No," Hayes said, "because his individual crime is symptomatic of a larger systemic problem. The Academy has become a breeding ground for exactly this kind of toxic culture. Legacy admissions, entitlement, a belief that pedigree matters more than performance. We need to burn it out, root and branch." Reeves pulled up new footage. "The gauntlet exercise is designed to be unwinnable for Omega Team. They're the sacrificial lambs, the punching bags that make Alpha Team look good. In 15 years of running this exercise, Omega has never won. Not once." "What if they did?" Sarah asked quietly. The 3 deputy directors exchanged glances. "If Omega won," Morrison said slowly, "especially if they won decisively against all odds, it would expose every flaw in the current system. It would prove that raw talent and adaptability matter more than expensive training and superior equipment. It would be undeniable. Sarah understood.
You want me to win?
We want you to do what you do best, Lieutenant, Hayes said. Asymmetric warfare. Turn weakness into strength. Make the impossible look inevitable.
And when it's over?
Sarah asked.
When everyone asks how a struggling trainee with a dislocated shoulder led a team of rejects to victory?
Then we show them exactly who you are, Reeves said. We reveal everything. Your record, your rank, your decorations. And we let the contrast between who they thought you were and who you actually are destroy every assumption this academy is built on. Sarah sat back, ignoring the spike of pain in her shoulder. Trainee Holloway's career will be over. His career was over the moment he tampered with that harness, Morrison said flatly. The only question is whether his failure becomes a private matter or a public lesson. How much operational freedom do I have? Hayes smiled, and it wasn't kind. You're the expert in unconventional warfare, Lieutenant. Surprise us. The gauntlet briefing began at 0430. 50 trainees crammed into a briefing room that smelled like coffee and nervous sweat. Sarah sat in the back row of Omega Team's section, her arms still in a sling, watching Marcus command the room from Alpha Team's front row. The chief instructor, a grizzled former Marine named Sergeant Major Collins, stood at the front. Listen up. The Gauntlet is a 72-hour field exercise designed to test everything you've learned. Alpha Team, you are federal agents hunting a domestic terrorist cell. Omega Team, you are that cell. Alpha has superior numbers, equipment, and resources. Omega has desperation and terrain knowledge. Marcus raised his hand. Sergeant Major, with all due respect, isn't this exercise a bit... He paused for effect. Predetermined? Alpha Team always wins. Collins's expression didn't change. Always is a dangerous word in warfare, Trainee Holloway. Underestimate your enemy, and you'll find out why. I'm just saying, looking at Omega's roster, Marcus gestured dismissively toward Sarah's section. This seems like more of a training exercise than an actual challenge. Several Alpha Team members laughed. Sarah watched Rodriguez, Omega's designated team leader, shrink in his seat. Trainee Chen, Collins called out suddenly. You're injured. Doc cleared you for limited duty. You want to sit this one out? Every eye in the room turned to her. Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of their stares. No, Sergeant Major. You sure? That shoulder's going to be a problem. Every operation has problems, Sergeant Major. You adapt. Something flickered in Collins's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Outstanding. Take your seat. As Sarah sat, she caught Marcus staring at her. His expression was complex, confusion mixed with irritation. He'd expected her to quit, expected the fall to break her. Collins continued the briefing, laying out rules of engagement, safety protocols, boundaries. Sarah barely listened. She was watching Rodriguez, a compact 24-year-old from El Paso who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. After dismissal, Sarah caught up with him in the hallway. Rodriguez? He turned, looking wary. Chen, look, about the exercise, you're team leader. Yeah, and we both know how this ends. We're outgunned, outmanned, and honestly, he gestured at the departing Omega team members. Half our team can't find north without a GPS. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you here? At the academy? Rodriguez blinked, surprised by the question. My dad was FBI, 23 years. Died in the line during a kidnapping rescue. I wanted to... He paused, swallowed hard. I wanted to finish what he started. He teach you anything about the job? He used to say the best agents weren't the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who could think 3 moves ahead. Sarah smiled slightly.
Smart man. Listen, I know I'm just another injured trainee slowing you down, but I have an idea about how we might not lose quite as badly as everyone expects. Rodriguez studied her. I'm listening. First, I need to know your communication protocols. What kind of devices are we allowed in the field?
Standard issue tactical radios. Personal phones are permitted but discouraged since they can be tracked.
What about apps? Religious apps, for example.
Rodriguez's eyebrows rose. That's actually interesting. There's a prayer app I use, 5 times a day reminders. Nobody would think twice about it.
Exactly. What if that app could send more than just prayer reminders?
Understanding dawned in Rodriguez's eyes. You want to use it as a covert communication channel.
Alpha Team will be monitoring standard frequencies. They'll be tracking radio traffic, looking for command patterns.
But a prayer app sending encrypted notifications to individual team members? That's invisible. Rodriguez stopped, looked at her harder. Where'd you learn to think like that? Sarah's expression didn't change.
My dad was military. He taught me some things too.
It was the truth, just not the whole truth. The gauntlet began in darkness. 0500 on a cold October morning, the kind where your breath made clouds and the ground was hard with frost. Omega Team assembled at the extraction point, a clearing in the woods 5 miles from the main academy campus. Sarah counted heads, 12 of them total. Rodriguez, Chen, Martinez, a bookish woman who'd washed out of every physical test. Thompson, older, a former accountant trying to reinvent himself. Williams, Jackson, not Marcus's Jackson, a different one, who had a pronounced limp from a training injury. Lee, Patterson. The rejects, the strugglers, the ones who didn't belong. All right, listen up, Rodriguez said, his voice shaking slightly. We have 72 hours to evade Alpha Team. They have helicopters, tracking dogs, thermal imaging, the works. We have... He looked down at their equipment. Basically, nothing.
We have terrain,
Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her.
We have terrain, she repeated.
We have the home field advantage. We know these woods from training. We know the creek beds, the caves, the old logging roads. Alpha Team is equipped for overwhelming force. That makes them predictable. Martinez spoke up, her voice uncertain.
You really think we can do this?
I think we can make them work for it, Sarah said. Rodriguez, you're team leader. I'm just offering suggestions. Rodriguez met her eyes, seemed to make a decision. What kind of suggestions?
First, we split up. Not random, strategic.
Martinez, you're our best navigator. Take Thompson and Williams. Use the creek bed system. Stay wet, stay cold. The dogs can't track through running water. We'll freeze, Thompson protested.
You'll be uncomfortable,
Sarah corrected. There's a difference. Lee, Patterson, Jackson, you 3 take the high ground, ridgeline approach. Move slow, move quiet. They'll expect us to run. Do the opposite. What about the rest of us? Rodriguez asked.
We're the distraction.
We move fast, leave obvious trails, make noise. Draw their main force toward the eastern sector while everyone else disappears. Lee, a quiet kid from Montana, raised his hand.
This sounds like actual military tactics.
It's common sense, Sarah said.
They're hunting us like we're criminals. But criminals run away. Soldiers use terrain.
Rodriguez pulled out his phone, opened the prayer app Sarah had helped him modify the night before. Everyone has the app installed? Nods all around. Good. Sarah's going to send tactical updates. They'll look like scripture quotes. Memorize the code. He held up a laminated card.
Psalm 23:4 means creek bed route is compromised. Proverbs 3:5 means hold position. Matthew 6:9 means rally point alpha. Got it? This is insane, Martinez whispered. This is survival, Sarah said. Alpha team expects us to panic. Let's disappoint them.
Alpha team mobilized like a military invasion. Marcus stood in the command center, a modified RV packed with communications equipment and tactical displays, barking orders into his headset with the confidence of someone who'd never experienced real failure. Helicopter 1, sweep grid sectors 4 through 7. I want thermal imaging on anything that moves. Ground teams, standard pursuit formation. They're going to run east toward the state park boundary. Cut them off before they reach it. Jackson, serving as his second in command, nodded approvingly. They've got nowhere to go. This'll be over by lunch. Make it breakfast, Marcus said. I want to be back at the academy in time for the afternoon briefing. Show these instructors what real tactical command looks like. Amanda monitored the communications board. Sir, we're getting movement signals in Sector 5. Looks like multiple targets heading east, just like you predicted. Marcus grinned. See? Predictable. Send Ground Team Alpha to intercept. Ground Team Bravo, swing wide and cut off their escape. This is textbook. What Marcus didn't know was that the targets in Sector 5 were Rodriguez and Sarah, running deliberately loud through the underbrush, making exactly the kind of noise that panicked amateurs would make. Sarah stumbled, deliberately, into a patch of dry leaves that crackled like fireworks. Rodriguez breathed hard into his radio, his voice pitched with false panic. They're on us! We need to split up! Perfect, Sarah whispered, too quiet for the radio. They're committing their main force. How do you know? Because that's what I'd do if I thought I had an easy win. Overwhelming force, quick victory, minimal effort. They ran for another 10 minutes, leaving a trail a blind man could follow. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, the crash of bodies through brush, the bark of commands, the baying of tracking dogs. Sarah checked her phone. Sent a message through the prayer app. Proverbs 3:5. Hold position. Across the woods, in a cold creek bed, Martinez received the notification. She showed it to Thompson and Williams. They hunkered down in the freezing water, teeth chattering, and waited. On the ridgeline, Lee checked his phone, saw the same message, and signaled Patterson and Jackson to freeze. They became statues among the trees. Sarah and Rodriguez reached a pre-positioned rally point, a small cave barely large enough for 2 people. They crawled inside, and Sarah pulled out a thermal blanket, wrapping it around them both. Now what? Rodriguez whispered. Now we let them chase shadows. Through the cave opening, they watched Alpha Team's ground units sweep past, moving fast, focused on the trail they'd laid. 50 yards. 40. 20. The pursuers ran right past the cave, too focused on the obvious trail to check the terrain. Rodriguez let out a breath he'd been holding. Holy, quiet, Sarah whispered. They'll double back when they lose the trail. They waited in silence. Sarah's shoulder throbbed. She ignored it. Pain was information, nothing more. It told you what was damaged, but it didn't control what you could do. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Morrison, she guessed. Watching. Impressive start. 10 minutes later, they heard Marcus's voice over the radio, frustrated now. Where the hell did they go? The trail just stops. Searching the area, sir, came the response. No thermal signatures, no tracks. It's like they vanished. They didn't vanish. They're here somewhere. Expand the search grid. Sarah smiled in the darkness of the cave. She pulled out her phone, sent another message. Matthew 6:9. Rally point Alpha. Across the woods, Omega Team began to move again, not retreating. circling, using the distraction of Alpha's massed forces to slip through the gaps in their coverage. "You're enjoying this," Rodriguez whispered.
"I'm doing my job," Sarah replied.
"Your job is to be a trainee." Sarah turned to look at him in the dim light. "My job is to not lose. There's a difference." They waited until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance, then slipped out of the cave and began moving in the opposite direction from Alpha Team's search. The game had just begun, and Marcus Holloway had no idea he was already losing. Hour 18. Marcus threw his headset across the command center, the crack of plastic against metal echoing through the RV. His face was red, veins prominent at his temples. "This is impossible," he said, his voice tight. 12 untrained rejects with broken equipment do not evade a superior force for 18 hours. It doesn't happen. Amanda looked up from the communications console, her confidence from the morning now replaced with something that looked like fear. "Sir, we've lost contact with Ground Team Charlie. They were supposed to check in 15 minutes ago."
"What do you mean, lost contact?"
"Radio silence. GPS shows them stationary in Sector 9, but they're not responding to hails." Jackson leaned over the tactical display, his finger tracing patterns that made no sense. "This is wrong. Look at the movement vectors. Omega's not running away from us. They're circling us." Marcus shoved him aside. "They're panicking, running in circles because they're scared and stupid." "Then why haven't we caught a single one?" Jackson's voice had an edge now. 18 hours, Marcus. We haven't captured one person." The radio crackled. A voice came through, strained and embarrassed. "Command, this is Ground Team Delta. We need extraction." Marcus grabbed the microphone. "Say again, Delta. You need what?" "Extraction, sir. We walked into a hornet's nest, literally. 3 of us are going into anaphylactic shock. We need medical, now." Amanda's eyes widened. "Sir, the weather forecast." There was a notation about bee activity in— "I don't care about bees," Marcus shouted. "They're bees. Work around them." "Sir, Trainee Cooper is allergic. His throat is closing. We need—" Marcus slammed the microphone down. "Fine. Send them back. Everyone else, tighten the perimeter. They can't hide forever." But even as he said it, doubt crept into his voice. 18 hours. No captures. And somewhere out in those woods, Chen was still moving with a dislocated shoulder, making him look like a fool. In the observation tower, Hayes watched the tactical display with an expression that might have been a smile. Morrison stood beside her, his arms crossed. "She's magnificent," Hayes said quietly. "Look at this. She's using their strengths against them. Their superior communications make them predictable. Their better equipment makes them noisy. Their confidence makes them sloppy." Reeves pulled up a different screen, showing encrypted data streams. "The prayer app was brilliant. Our monitoring systems logged it as religious notifications. If we hadn't known to look for it specifically, we'd never have caught it." "How many Alpha Team members down?" Morrison asked. 7 out of commission. 3 from the Hornets, 2 twisted ankles chasing false trails, 1 with severe poison ivy in places I don't want to think about, and 1 who fell into a covered pit and broke his collarbone." "Covered pit?" Hayes raised an eyebrow. That's advanced SEER training. That's not something trainees should know." "It's not," Morrison agreed. "But Lieutenant Chen spent 3 years teaching survival, evasion, resistance, and escape to Special Forces candidates. A covered pit is basically kindergarten for her." Reeves checked his watch. "Marcus is going to crack soon. His entire identity is built on being the best. Right now, he's being systematically dismantled by the girl he tried to kill." "Good," Hayes said, her voice cold. "Let him crack. When this is over, I want him to understand exactly how badly he misjudged her." Hour 24. Sarah crouched in the underbrush with Martinez and Thompson, watching Alpha Team's supply cache through binoculars. 2 guards stood watch, looking bored and cold. "You're sure about this?" Martinez whispered. Her earlier doubt had transformed into something that looked like belief, but she was still cautious. "They're expecting us to hide," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "They're not expecting offense." Thompson shifted his weight, grimaced. "My entire body hurts. I haven't slept in 24 hours. How are you even functioning with that shoulder?" "Mind over matter," Sarah said, which was partially true. The other truth, that she'd once stayed awake for 72 hours during an operation in Kandahar, wasn't something she could share. "Rodriguez, you in position?" Her phone buzzed with a response, a scripture quote that meant yes. "All right," Sarah said. "Martinez, you're up. Remember what I told you." Martinez took a deep breath, then stood up and stumbled into the clearing, her movements exaggerated and panicked. "Please, please help me. I twisted my ankle. I can't. I need help." The 2 guards exchanged glances. One of them spoke into his radio. "Command, we have visual on an Omega team member, female, injured, requesting permission to apprehend." Marcus's voice came back instantly. "Finally. Yes, grab her, and find out where the others are." The guards moved toward Martinez, their weapons lowered, their guard down. They were thinking about the easy victory, the interrogation, the return to warmth and food. They weren't thinking about the underbrush behind them. Rodriguez and Williams emerged silently, each carrying a paintball gun loaded with marking rounds. The exercise's stand-in for live fire. 2 soft pops. 2 blooms of red paint on the guards' backs. "You're neutralized," Rodriguez said, his voice shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. "Hand over your equipment." The guards stared in shock. One of them started to protest, then saw the rules officer watching from a distance and deflated. This is bullshit." "This is tactics," Sarah said, emerging from concealment. She walked to the supply cache, started sorting through it. "Thompson, grab the food. Martinez, communications equipment. Rodriguez, first aid supplies." "Wait," one of the guards said. "You can't just take our—" "We just did," Sarah interrupted. She looked at him, and something in her expression made him go quiet. "Tell your commander that Omega Team sends their regards." As they melted back into the woods with their captured supplies, Sarah heard one of the guards radio in. "Command, this is Guard Post 3. We've been neutralized. The supply cache is compromised." The silence that followed was beautiful. Then Marcus's voice, high and strained. "Say that again." "They took the supplies, sir. All of them. And they knew exactly what they were doing." This wasn't luck. This was planned. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as they moved through the woods. Behind them, she could hear Marcus screaming into the radio, his composure finally shattering. Hour 36. In the command center, Marcus looked like he hadn't slept, because he hadn't. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his uniform was rumpled. "We need to change tactics," Jackson said carefully. "Clearly the standard approach isn't—" "The standard approach is fine," Marcus snapped. "They got lucky. One lucky raid doesn't change the fundamental tactical situation." Amanda looked up from her station. "Sir, we're down to 30 operational members. Omega hasn't lost a single person. The math isn't in our favor anymore." "The math is wrong." "The math is numbers," Jackson said, his voice flat. "And numbers don't lie. We've been outmaneuvered. We need to—" Marcus grabbed him by the collar. "We need to hunt them down and end this. I am not losing to Chen. I am not losing to a girl who couldn't even handle a basic rappelling exercise."
Jackson pushed him off, his own temper flaring. Maybe that girl is better than you thought. Maybe you underestimated her.
Maybe. He stopped, seeing the fury in Marcus's face. Maybe we all did.
Get out.
What? Get out of my command center. You're relieved. Jackson stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked out. Amanda started to speak, thought better of it, stayed silent. Marcus stood alone in the command center, staring at the tactical display that showed his forces scattered and demoralized. Somewhere out there, Chen was moving, planning, winning. It should have been impossible, but it was happening, and he couldn't stop it. Hour 48. Sarah sat with Omega Team in a cave system Rodriguez had found. They were eating the food they'd captured from Alpha's supply cache, and the mood was almost giddy. "I can't believe we're winning," William said, his mouth full. "We're actually winning." "We haven't won yet," Sarah cautioned. "Marcus still has superior numbers. He's going to do something desperate. Desperate people make dangerous decisions." Lee looked at her curiously. "How do you know so much about this? I mean, I get that you're smart, but this is professional level thinking." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "My father was in the military. I grew up around it." "Your father must have been special forces or something," Martinez said. "This isn't regular military thinking. This is..." She paused, searching for words. "This is like you've done this before." The cave went quiet. Everyone was looking at Sarah now, questions forming in their eyes. Rodriguez broke the silence. "Does it matter? We're winning because we're working together, because we trusted each other when everyone said we couldn't do it." He looked around the cave. "Whether Chen learned this from her dad or figured it out herself, I don't care. I care that we're proving we belong here." The moment passed. The team went back to eating, but Sarah saw Martinez watching her with thoughtful eyes, and she knew the questions wouldn't stay buried forever. Her phone buzzed, a message from Morrison. "Marcus is planning something. Helicopter deployment. Be ready." Sarah stood up, her shoulder protesting. "Everyone listen up. We're about to enter the final phase. Alpha Team is going to throw everything at us. Helicopters, coordinated assault, the works." "Can we survive that?" Thompson asked. "We don't need to survive it," Sarah said. "We need to end it. Rodriguez, I need you to trust me on something." "What?" "I need to go after Marcus, directly, at his command center." The cave erupted in protests. "That's suicide! He'll be captured for sure! Sarah, that's crazy!" Rodriguez held up his hand for silence. "Explain." Sarah met his eyes. "Marcus's strength is coordination. His command center controls everything. If we take it out, Alpha Team becomes a bunch of scattered individuals with no leadership. They'll fall apart. But how do you even get close? They'll have guards, security. They'll have guards expecting an attack. They won't have guards expecting someone to walk in the front door." Martinez's eyes widened. "You're going to infiltrate?" "It's the last thing they'll expect," Sarah said. "Everyone's been running from them for 48 hours. Nobody would be crazy enough to walk into their command center." "Because it is crazy," Williams protested. "It's asymmetric," Sarah corrected. "Rodriguez, I need the team to create a diversion, something big enough to pull their attention away from the command center." "Can you do that?" Rodriguez studied her face, seems to find what he was looking for. "Yeah, we can do that. But Chen, if you get caught, then you finish the mission. You keep going. You make them work for every single hour until the clock runs out." Sarah checked her phone. "We have 24 hours left. Let's make them count." Hour 60. Marcus stood outside the command center, watching his team prepare for what he was calling the final sweep. Every remaining operational member of Alpha Team was here, armed and ready.
This ends now, he told them. Coordinated assault, multiple vectors. We flush them out of whatever hole they're hiding in, and we end this embarrassment. His phone rang. The Academy's chief instructor, Sergeant Major Collins. Trainee Holloway, I'm calling to remind you that the exercise ends in 12 hours. Current status shows 0 Omega captures. That's about to change, Sergeant Major. I certainly hope so. For your sake. Collins paused. One more thing. I'm watching the tactical feeds. You're making the same mistake officers have made for centuries. What mistake is that, sir? You're fighting the war you want instead of the war you have. Your enemy isn't following your script. Adapt or die. The line went dead.
Marcus stood there, the phone still at his ear, Collins's words echoing in his head. Then he shook it off. Collins was old guard, didn't understand modern tactical doctrine. "Move out," Marcus ordered. "I want them found in the next 3 hours." As Alpha Team deployed, Sarah watched from a maintenance shed 50 yards from the command center. She'd been here for 20 minutes, timing the guard rotations, watching the patterns. She'd changed clothes, found a spare instructor's jacket in an unattended vehicle, put her hair up under a cap. With the sling removed and her posture adjusted, she looked like someone who belonged. Someone official. Her phone buzzed. Rodriguez. "Diversion starting in 5 minutes." Sarah typed back. "Make it loud." The explosion, simulated but impressive, lit up the eastern sky. Fireworks rigged to training charges set off in perfect sequence to sound like a coordinated attack. Alpha Team's radio net erupted in panic. "Contact! Multiple hostiles! Sector 12! They're attacking the perimeter! All units, converge on Sector 12!" The guards at the command center looked at each other, clearly torn between their post and the action. One of them spoke into his radio. "Command, should we maintain position or respond to contact?" Marcus's voice came back, high and excited. "Maintain position! It might be a feint!" But when a second explosion went off, closer this time, the guards wavered. One of them started moving toward the commotion. "We should help! Stay at your post!" the other one hissed. Sarah chose that moment to walk out of the shed, clipboard in hand, moving with the purposeful stride of someone who had every right to be there. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice pitched to carry authority. "Instructor Martinez, I need to do a quick safety check on the communication equipment." The remaining guard looked uncertain. "Ma'am, we're in lockdown." "Which is exactly why I need to verify the backup systems are functional." Sarah walked past him without waiting for permission, her body language radiating the confidence of someone who does this every day. "This'll take 5 minutes. Continue your patrol." She was at the command center door before he could formulate a protest. Her hand on the handle, her heart rate at 72 beats per minute, elevated but controlled. Inside, Amanda sat alone at the communications console, monitoring the chaos. She looked up when Sarah entered, her expression shifting from surprise to confusion. "Chen? How did you—" Sarah held up one hand, her voice calm. "It's over, Amanda." "What?" Sarah walked to the main tactical console, placed her hand on Marcus's empty command chair. "The exercise. It's over. You can surrender now, or you can wait for the clock to run out. But either way, Omega won." Amanda stood up, her hand moving toward the radio. "You can't be here. This is against the rules." "Check the rules," Sarah said. "Omega Team objective. Evade capture for 72 hours. Secondary objective. Demonstrate tactical superiority. There's nothing that says we can't take the fight to you." Marcus is chasing ghosts in Sector 12, while I'm standing in his command center."
Sarah moved to the tactical display, studied it for a moment. You're down to 23 operational members. They're scattered across 6 sectors chasing a fireworks display. Even if he calls them back now, Omega Team can evade for the remaining hours. Amanda's face was pale. You planned this. All of it. The 18 hours of hiding.
The supply rate. The diversion. This was always your strategy. Not mine, Sarah said. Rodriguez is team leader. I just made suggestions. That's... Amanda stopped, really looked at Sarah for the first time. Saw past the quiet trainee, the injured shoulder, the girl who didn't belong. Who are you? Sarah reached out and gently tapped Amanda's shoulder, triggering the tactical vest's proximity sensor. A soft chime echoed through the command center. The automated voice announced, "Team member neutralized. Command structure compromised." Amanda stared at the red lights on her vest, then back at Sarah. This isn't possible. You're injured. You're barely qualified. I'm exactly what I need to be, Sarah said quietly. She picked up the radio microphone. Omega Team Actual, this is Omega 6. Command center secured. Mission accomplished. Rodriguez's voice came back, shaking with disbelief and joy. Say again, Omega 6? Mission accomplished. Rally Point Alpha. 20 hours early. Through the window, Sarah could see the guards returning, confusion written on their faces. They'd heard the announcement. They knew what it meant. The exercise was over, and for the first time in 15 years, Omega Team had won. Amanda sank into her chair, her hand trembling as she reached for the radio. I need to call Marcus. Go ahead, Sarah said. Amanda keyed the microphone. Command to all units. Exercise terminated. Return to base. Omega Team victory. The radio silence that followed was profound. Then Marcus's voice, barely controlled. Say that again. It's over, Marcus. Chen infiltrated the command center. She neutralized me. Per the rules, Omega Team wins. That's... No. No! Check the footage. She must have violated... But the rules officer's voice cut in, official and final. Exercise concluded. Omega Team victory confirmed. All personnel return to debriefing. Sarah stood in the command center, her shoulder throbbing, her body exhausted, and allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. Then her phone buzzed. Morrison. Well done, Lieutenant. Now comes the hard part. Report to the main auditorium in 1 hour. Bring your team. It's time to show them who you really are. Sarah's moment of victory faded. The real test was about to begin, and Marcus Holloway's world was about to end. The main auditorium filled slowly. Omega Team entered together, still covered in dirt and sweat, their faces showing exhaustion mixed with disbelief. Rodriguez kept looking at Sarah like she might disappear if he blinked. I still don't understand how you knew, he said quietly as they took seats in the back row. The guard rotations, the command center layout, the timing. You knew everything. Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes were on the stage, where 3 figures in civilian clothes stood waiting. Morrison, Hayes, Reeves, the deputy directors who weren't supposed to be here, who had no official reason to attend the training exercise debrief. Alpha Team filed in next, their body language defeated. Marcus entered last, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the room until they found Sarah. The look he gave her was pure hatred mixed with confusion. He took his seat in the front row, his posture rigid. Sergeant Major Collins walked to the podium. Attention! This debriefing is now in session. Before we begin the standard after-action review, I'm turning the floor over to Deputy Director Morrison. Sir. Morrison stepped forward.
He didn't look at his notes. He looked directly at Marcus. "Trainee Holloway, stand up." Marcus rose, his face carefully neutral. "Yes, sir." "In your tactical assessment, what was the primary factor in Omega Team's victory?" Marcus's jaw worked. They got lucky, sir. A few fortunate breaks." "Lucky?" Morrison's voice was soft, dangerous.
47 consecutive tactical decisions, each one perfectly calibrated to exploit your weaknesses. And you call that luck?
"Sir, sit down." Morrison waited until Marcus complied, then addressed the entire room. "What you witnessed over the past 60 hours wasn't luck. It was expertise, professional-level tactical thinking applied against a conventional force. Trainee Holloway, your strategy was textbook. Overwhelming force, superior equipment, coordinated assault. You did everything right according to standard doctrine." Marcus's expression flickered with hope. "And you were dismantled by a team of rejects, led by someone you thought didn't belong here." Morrison let that sink in. Which brings us to the question: how did a struggling trainee with a dislocated shoulder orchestrate a victory that military strategists would study? The auditorium was silent. Sarah felt every eye turning toward her. Morrison gestured to the large screen behind him.
What I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. It requires triple authentication from 3 separate deputy directors. This has never been done in the history of this academy. Hayes and Reeves joined him at the control console. Sarah watched them enter their codes one by one, her heart rate climbing to 80 beats per minute. She'd known this was coming, had prepared for it. But sitting here, about to have her entire cover stripped away in front of 50 people, felt different than she'd imagined. The screen flickered to life. A file header appeared. Chen, Sarah L. Classification: Top Secret / Special Access Required. Authipal Director Level. Morrison's voice was steady. "Trainee Chen, please stand." Sarah rose, her legs solid despite the exhaustion. Rodriguez reached out like he wanted to stop her, then pulled his hand back. The screen began to scroll. Sarah watched her life displayed for everyone to see. Current assignment: Deep Cover Assessment, FBI Academy Quantico. Actual rank: Lieutenant, Special Activities Division. Operational Unit: CIA Ground Branch / FBI HRT. Joint Task Force. Martinez gasped. Thompson's mouth fell open. Lee whispered, "No way." The screen continued. Combat deployments: Syria, 2019 to 2021, 23 months. Active operations: Yemen, 2021 to 2022, 14 months. Active operations: Somalia, 2022 to 2023, 8 months. Active operations: Ukraine, 2023 to 2024, advisory role, classified. Williams turned to stare at Sarah. "You were in Syria?" The decorations began appearing. Each one felt like a punch to Sarah's carefully maintained cover. Awards and decorations: Distinguished Intelligence Cross, Silver Star, 2 oak leaf clusters, Bronze Star for Valor, Purple Heart, 3 oak leaf clusters, Intelligence Star. Rodriguez stood up, his voice shaking. 3 Purple Hearts? You were wounded 3 times? Sarah met his eyes. 4, actually. 1 wasn't documented. The screen shifted to her operational record. The room went absolutely silent. Specialty qualifications: Master rating, Infiltration / Exfiltration. Advanced SEER Instructor Certification. Asymmetric Warfare Doctrine Specialist. Combat Leadership, 47 successful solo operations. Fluent,
Arabic, Pashto, Dari, Mandarin, Russian. Marcus had gone pale. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. The final line appeared. Reason for current assignment: institutional assessment of FBI Academy training standards, cultural dynamics, and merit-based selection processes. Morrison let the silence stretch. Then he spoke, his voice carrying through the auditorium. Lieutenant Chen was sent here 6 weeks ago to evaluate this academy, to determine if we were producing the kind of agents this country needs, or if we had become a social club for the well-connected. He paused. Her report will determine the future of this institution.
Hayes stepped forward. In those 6 weeks, Lieutenant Chen experienced systematic bullying, sabotage, and ultimately attempted murder when trainee Holloway deliberately compromised her safety equipment. The room erupted, trainees talking over each other, instructors leaning forward in shock. Collins had to call for silence twice. Marcus shot to his feet. That's a lie! It was an accident! The equipment was faulty! Morrison held up a tablet. We have security footage from the equipment room. We have forensic analysis of the harness showing deliberate tampering. We have testimony from Instructor Davis, who noted the sabotage after the incident. He looked at Marcus. Would you like to see the footage? Watch yourself adjust the release mechanism while Chen was distracted. Marcus's face went from pale to red. You don't understand. She didn't belong here. She was weak. She was a decorated combat veteran testing you, Reeves interrupted. And you failed spectacularly. Amanda stood up, her voice barely audible. Sir, we didn't know. If we had known... If you had known she was a lieutenant, you would have treated her with respect, Hayes said. But you should have treated her with respect anyway. Because she was a fellow trainee. Because basic human decency doesn't require someone to prove their worth first. Sarah remained standing, watching Marcus unravel. Part of her felt sympathy. Most of her felt nothing but professional detachment. This was the mission outcome. This was always how it would end. Jackson stood up, his voice tentative. Sir, when you say attempted murder, I mean trainee Holloway deliberately sabotaged Lieutenant Chen's equipment with the intent to cause serious injury or death. Morrison's voice was flat. That's not hazing. That's not a prank. That's a federal crime. Marcus looked around wildly, like he was searching for an exit that didn't exist. My grandfather was... Your grandfather helped build this academy, Morrison said, and right now, he's probably spinning in his grave. Because you've demonstrated exactly what's wrong with legacy admissions. Entitlement, arrogance, and a fundamental inability to recognize excellence when it doesn't fit your preconceptions. Collins walked down the aisle toward Marcus. Trainee Holloway, you will surrender your academy identification immediately. Sir, please, now. Marcus fumbled with his wallet, pulled out the ID card with shaking hands. Collins took it, held it up for everyone to see, then deliberately tore it in half. You are hereby separated from this academy pending criminal investigation. You will be escorted to your quarters to collect your personal effects. You will then be removed from this facility. 2 security officers appeared at the doors. Marcus looked at them, then back at Sarah. His eyes were wet. You ruined me, he said, his voice breaking. Everything I worked for, my family's legacy, you destroyed it all. Sarah spoke for the first time since standing. Her voice was quiet, but carried through the silent auditorium. No. You ruined yourself. I was just here to watch. You were hiding. You were lying about who you were. I was doing my job.
You were trying to kill someone you thought was beneath you.
Sarah took a step toward him.
In 6 weeks here, you never once asked yourself why I stayed quiet, why I took the insults, why I kept showing up. You assumed it was weakness, but real professionals don't announce themselves. They don't need validation. They just do the work.
Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. The security officers approached. "Sir, it's time to go." As they escorted Marcus out, he looked back once. Sarah met his eyes, her expression neutral. Not triumphant, not angry. Just the face of someone who had completed a mission. The doors closed behind him. The auditorium remained silent for a long moment. Then Rodriguez spoke, his voice thick with emotion.
Lieutenant Chen.
Sarah.
We had no idea.
Sarah turned to face Omega Team.
I know.
When you were helping us, teaching us, you were a real operator. Someone who'd actually done all this, for real.
Yes.
Martinez stood up, tears on her face.
Why? Why help us? You could have just watched, just written your report.
Sarah thought about Syria, about teaching young soldiers who reminded her of these trainees, about the ones who'd listened and survived, and the ones who hadn't and didn't.
Because you deserved better than what you were getting. Because the system was failing you. And because...
She paused, her voice softening.
Because you reminded me why I joined in the first place. To serve something bigger than myself.
Williams wiped his eyes. That thing you said about your father being military, was that true? My father was a colonel in Army Special Forces. He died in Iraq when I was 16. He taught me that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn through competence and character. Sarah looked at each of them.
You earned it this weekend. Every one of you.
Morrison returned to the podium. Lieutenant Chen's assessment of this academy will be delivered to the FBI director within 48 hours. Based on preliminary findings, we are implementing immediate changes. Collins stepped forward. Effective immediately, all legacy preferences are suspended pending review. All current trainees will be re-evaluated based solely on performance metrics. Any instructor found to have participated in or ignored harassment will be reassigned. Hayes addressed the room. This academy was built to produce the finest law enforcement officers in the world. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. We started valuing the wrong things. Lieutenant Chen's presence here, and your collective failure to recognize her excellence, proves we need fundamental reform. Reeves added, the gauntlet exercise results will be preserved as a teaching tool. Future classes will study how a team of underestimated individuals defeated a superior force through intelligence, adaptability, and trust. This is what we should have been teaching all along. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Morrison. Medical is waiting. Get that shoulder properly treated. You've earned it. Collins called out, Lieutenant Chen, you're dismissed. Report to medical immediately. Sarah nodded, started to leave. Rodriguez caught her arm gently. Hey, thank you. For everything. She managed a small smile.
You did the work, Rodriguez. You led the team. I just made suggestions.
Suggestions that won us an unwinnable exercise.
There's no such thing as unwinnable. Just difficult.
Sarah looked at the rest of Omega Team.
You all proved that this weekend.
Don't forget it. As she walked up the aisle, every trainee she passed stood. It started with Lee, then Martinez, then Thompson. One by one, the entire auditorium rose to their feet. Not at attention, not saluting, just standing, acknowledging. Sarah kept walking, her eyes forward, her shoulder screaming. She made it to the doors before the emotion hit her. 6 weeks of being invisible, of taking abuse, of watching a broken system grind down good people. And now this. Outside, the Virginia evening was cool and quiet. Sarah took a deep breath, let it out slowly. A voice spoke from the shadows. "That was quite a performance, Lieutenant." Sarah turned. Hayes stood there, her expression softer than it had been inside. "Not a performance, ma'am. Just the truth." "The truth is rarely that clean." Hayes walked closer. "You know what happens now, don't you? Marcus's family will fight back. They'll claim entrapment, political pressure. His grandfather's legacy will be invoked 1,000 times." "I know." "And you're prepared for that." Sarah thought about the young soldiers she'd trained in Syria, the ones who'd trusted her and lived because of it. The ones she'd sent into situations knowing some might not come back. "Ma'am, I've done harder things than face down a legacy family protecting their reputation." Hayes smiled. "I believe you have." She held out her hand. "It's been an honor, Lieutenant." Sarah shook it. "Thank you, ma'am." "One more thing. Your report. Be honest. Brutally honest. Don't pull punches because you're worried about political fallout. We need to know exactly how broken this place is, so we can fix it." "Understood." Hayes walked back toward the auditorium, leaving Sarah alone in the gathering darkness. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from an unknown number. "This is Martinez. I don't know if this reaches you, but I wanted to say, you changed my life this weekend." I was ready to quit, to accept that I didn't belong. You showed me I was wrong. Thank you. Sarah stood there, reading the message 3 times. Then she typed back, "You always belonged. You just needed to see it. Keep fighting." She pocketed the phone and started walking toward the medical facility. Her shoulder throbbed with each step, but it was a good pain. The pain of a mission completed, a job well done. Behind her, the auditorium lights blazed. Inside, an institution was being forced to confront its failures. Ahead of her, a doctor waited to fix what could be fixed. And somewhere out there, Marcus Holloway was learning the hardest lesson of his life. That respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And once lost, it's almost impossible to get back. The medical facility was quiet at this hour. Sarah sat on the examination table, while a different doctor, this one with special operations experience written in the scars on his forearms, manipulated her shoulder with professional efficiency. "You've dislocated this before," he observed. "Multiple times. 3. 4, by the scar tissue pattern. When was the first?" Sarah closed her eyes, remembering. "Aleppo, 2020. Repelling extraction under fire." The doctor paused. "I was in Aleppo in 2020, Marine Special Operations." "Then you know why I didn't report it." "Yeah." He resumed working, his touch gentler now. "You know, when they told us a lieutenant was undercover here, half the medical staff didn't believe it. Thought it was some administrative desk jockey playing spy games." He met her eyes. "But you've got the real scars, the ones that tell stories you can't talk about." "Everyone's got scars, Doc." "Not like these." He finished the examination, started preparing a proper sling. "Your shoulder's going to need surgery eventually. The socket's compromised. You keep dislocating it, you'll lose mobility permanently." "How long can I put it off?" "Knowing people like you? Too long." He secured the sling. "But I'm recommending 6 months minimum before you take another field assignment. Let it heal properly this time." Sarah nodded. 6 months felt like a lifetime when you were used to operating at full speed. But she'd learned patience the hard way. In Syria, in Yemen,
in all the places where rushing got people killed. Her phone buzzed. Morrison. My office, tomorrow morning, 0800. Bring your report. She'd been working on it for 3 days, 73 pages of brutal honesty about everything she'd witnessed, the cultural rot, the systemic failures, the good instructors being sidelined by political pressure, and the recommendations, dozens of them, for how to fix it all. Doc, am I cleared to travel? Depends. Where to? Washington, director's office.
He whistled low. The big chair himself? At her nod, he shrugged. Yeah, you're cleared. Try not to dislocate anything else before you get there. Sarah spent that night in her trainee quarters one last time. The room felt different now. Smaller. Like a costume she'd worn for a role that was finally over. There was a knock. She opened the door to find Rodriguez standing there, looking uncertain. Hey, heard you're leaving tomorrow. Yeah. Can we talk, just for a minute? Sarah stepped aside, let him in. He sat in the desk chair, ran his hands through his hair. I've been thinking about everything, the whole exercise. What you did. He looked up at her. You could have let us fail. Could have just watched, written your report, moved on. But you helped us. Why? Sarah sat on the bed, her shoulder protesting. You really want to know? Yeah. Because 6 years ago, I was you. A trainee who didn't fit the mold. Someone people looked at and decided didn't belong. She paused, remembering. I had an instructor who could have let me wash out. Instead, he pulled me aside one night and said, Chen, you're better than you think you are. Stop trying to prove you belong and start proving they're wrong about what belonging means. Did you? Prove them wrong? I'm still here, aren't I? Sarah smiled slightly. That instructor died in Syria 3 years later. IED. I was there when it happened. Rodriguez's expression shifted. I'm sorry. Don't be. He died doing what he believed in, training the next generation to be better than his. She met Rodriguez's eyes. You're going to be a good agent, not because you won an exercise, because you listened, you adapted, you trusted your team even when everyone said they were worthless. They weren't worthless. We just needed someone to believe in us. No, you needed to believe in yourselves. I just gave you permission. Rodriguez stood, extended his hand. Sarah shook it. Thank you, Lieutenant. It's just Sarah now. The mission's over. He smiled. I don't think your missions are ever really over. You're just between them. He walked to the door, paused. Hey, that instructor who helped you, what was his name? Colonel James Chen. My father. Rodriguez's eyes widened. Your father was your instructor? Best one I ever had. And the hardest. Sarah's voice was quiet. He never gave me anything I didn't earn. Never made it easier because I was his daughter. Made it harder, actually. Wanted to be sure I could survive on my own merit. Sounds like he raised you right. After Rodriguez left, Sarah sat alone, thinking about her father, about the lessons he'd taught her, about the day she'd stood at his funeral and promised herself she'd honor his memory by being exactly the kind of soldier he'd trained her to be. Silent, competent, effective. She'd kept that promise, even when it hurt. Morrison's office in Washington was exactly what Sarah expected. Efficient, organized, no wasted space or unnecessary decoration. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Your report? Sarah handed over the thumb drive.
73 pages, full assessment, nothing held back.
Morrison plugged it in, began reading. His expression didn't change, but Sarah could see the tension building in his shoulders as he scrolled through page after page. After 10 minutes, he sat back. This is damning.
You asked for honesty.
I did, and you delivered. He rubbed his face. The director's going to read this tomorrow. It's going to cause an earthquake.
Good. The Academy needs one.
Morrison's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. It's Senator Holloway, Marcus's grandfather.
Are you going to answer?
Eventually. He's called 17 times since his grandson was removed from the Academy. Morrison let it ring. He's threatening congressional hearings, formal investigations. Claims you entrapped his grandson. Did I? You existed. Marcus attacked you. Those are the only facts that matter. Morrison leaned forward. But I need to prepare you for what's coming. The Holloway family has serious political power. They're going to make this ugly. Sarah's expression didn't change. I've been shot at by people who actually knew how to kill. I think I can handle a family protecting their legacy. Can you handle testifying before Congress? Because that's where this might go. If that's what's required, then yes. Morrison studied her. You're not what I expected, Lieutenant. What did you expect? Someone harder, more, I don't know, damaged by 6 years in the field. Sarah thought about Aleppo, about the translator who'd died in her arms, about the child she'd pulled from rubble who didn't make it to the hospital, about all the small deaths that accumulated in your soul when you did this work. I am damaged, she said quietly. I'm just functional with it. The phone rang again. Different number. Morrison answered this time. Yes, Director? He listened, his expression shifting. Yes, sir. She's here now. A pause. Understood. I'll bring her up. He hung up, looked at Sarah. The director wants to meet you. Now. Director William Hawthorne was 63, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen 40 years of law enforcement evolution. He stood when Sarah entered, which surprised her. Lieutenant Chen, sit, please. Sarah sat. Hawthorne remained standing, looking out the window at the Washington skyline. I've been director for 8 years. In that time, I've read thousands of after-action reports, assessments, reviews. Most of them are careful, political, written by people who know their careers depend on not rocking the boat too hard. He turned to face her. Your report is none of those things. Sir, you asked Deputy Director Morrison for an honest assessment. I did. And you gave me one that's going to force me to make very difficult decisions. Decisions that will anger powerful people and disrupt an institution that's been running the same way for decades. He walked to his desk, picked up a printed copy of her report. You call for elimination of all legacy preferences, mandatory anti-bias training, complete restructuring of the evaluation criteria, removal of 17 instructors, installation of regular undercover audits. This isn't reform, Lieutenant. This is revolution. Sir, with respect, the Academy needs revolution. The current system is broken. It's producing agents who value connections over competence, who mistake pedigree for potential, who— Sarah stopped, modulated her tone. Who tried to kill a fellow trainee because she didn't fit their image of what an agent should look like. Hawthorne set down the report. Tell me about Marcus Holloway. What do you want to know? Whether he deserves a second chance? Sarah considered this carefully. Sir, that's not my call to make. I'm making it your call. You're the one he tried to kill. You're the one who exposed him. You're the one whose testimony could send him to prison for attempted murder of a federal officer. So I'm asking, does he deserve another chance? Sarah thought about Marcus's face as he was escorted out. The broken expression, the tears, the collapse of everything he'd thought defined him. Sir, Marcus Holloway is a product of a system that told him he was special because of his last name. That system failed him as much as he failed himself. He made terrible choices. He hurt people. But he's 26 years old. If the system changes, if he's forced to earn his way instead of inheriting it, maybe he could become the kind of agent his grandfather actually was. You're suggesting we give him another chance. I'm suggesting we give him the chance to earn one. Strip away the legacy admission. Make him reapply like anyone else. If he gets in on his own merit, fine. If he doesn't, he wasn't cut out for this anyway. Hawthorne smiled, and it reached his eyes. That's more generous than I expected. It's not generosity, sir. It's practicality. We need good agents. If Marcus can become one, why waste the potential? And if he can't? Then he'll wash out on his own merit instead of coasting on his family name. Either way, the system wins. Hawthorne walked around his desk, extended his hand. Lieutenant Chen, I'm implementing every recommendation in your report. Effective immediately. The Academy is going into lockdown for institutional reform. It's going to be messy, political, expensive, and absolutely necessary. Sarah shook his hand, felt the strength in it. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You're the one who's going to help implement it. Sir? You're being assigned to the Academy as a permanent instructor, rank of captain. You'll oversee the new Red Team program, regular undercover audits to test for systemic failures. You'll also teach advanced tactics and asymmetric warfare. He paused. Unless you'd prefer to return to field operations? Sarah thought about Syria, about Yemen, about the adrenaline and the fear, and the constant awareness that every mission could be your last. Then she thought about Rodriguez, about Martinez, about the young agents who deserved better training than they were getting. I accept, sir, on one condition. Which is? Full authority to fail anyone who doesn't meet standards, regardless of connections, regardless of political pressure. Granted. Anyone else I need to know about? Rodriguez, trainee Miguel Rodriguez. He's got real potential. He listened. He adapted. He led a team of rejects to victory because he trusted them. Sarah met Hawthorne's eyes. He's exactly the kind of agent this bureau needs. I'll make note of it. Hawthorne returned to his desk. Dismissed, Captain. Report to Quantico in 2 weeks. Your shoulders should be functional by then. 1 year later, Sarah stood at the obstacle course watching a new class of trainees tackle the rappelling tower. A young woman named Cooper was climbing, her movements efficient and confident. She reached the platform, clipped in, and descended smoothly. Rodriguez, now a junior instructor, stood beside Sarah. Cooper's going to be good. Third best in her class. Third? Yeah, there's a kid from Montana, Jackson, who's exceptional, and Martinez, no relation to our Martinez, who thinks 3 moves ahead. Sarah smiled. Good. The Academy needs more people who think. It's different now, since the reforms. Rodriguez gestured at the training ground. No more legacy preferences. Every trainee here earned their spot, and they know it. How many have you failed this cycle? 11. Good. Standards matter. A voice called from behind them. Captain Chen? Sarah turned to find a young man in trainee uniform standing at attention. He was familiar, but she couldn't place him immediately. Yes? I wanted to thank you, ma'am, for your report. For what you did last year.
I don't think we've met. No, ma'am, but my sister was in your class. Trainee Martinez. She washed out during your time there, but she reapplied after the reforms, made it in on merit. She's graduating next month. Sarah felt something warm in her chest. That's good to hear. She told me what you did, how you helped her believe she could do it. I wanted you to know it mattered. To her, to our family. He hesitated. To all of us who never thought we had a shot at this. After he left, Rodriguez spoke quietly. You changed a lot of lives that weekend. I just did my job. No, you did more than that. You proved that the system could change, that merit could actually matter. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus Holloway. I know I don't have the right to contact you,
But I wanted you to know I'm reapplying to the academy next cycle. No family connections, no legacy preference, just me and my qualifications. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'm going to try. And if I do, I'll earn it the way you earned everything you have. Thank you for showing me what that means. Sarah stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Rodriguez. Are you going to respond? No, he doesn't need my validation. He needs to prove it to himself. You think he'll make it? Sarah watched Cooper complete another perfect descent, then start climbing again without being told. Saw the determination in her movements, the refusal to settle for good enough. I think if he's willing to do the work, he's got a shot. And if he's not, the system will filter him out. Either way, it won't be because of his last name. Rodriguez nodded. That's the difference, isn't it? The system actually works now. The system always had the potential to work. It just needed people willing to fix it instead of protect it. They stood in silence, watching the new class train. These trainees didn't know about the corruption that had existed before. They didn't know about Marcus Holloway or the institutional rot that Sarah had exposed. They just knew they'd earned their place. And that was exactly how it should be. 6 months later, Sarah sat in a classroom teaching advanced tactical theory to a group of senior trainees. She was mid-lecture when the door opened. Deputy Director Morrison entered, followed by Director Hawthorne. As you were, Hawthorne said, but every trainee stood anyway. Sarah walked to the back of the room. Sir? Continue your lecture, Captain. We're just observing. Sarah returned to the front, continued explaining asymmetric warfare principles. She could feel the weight of scrutiny, but ignored it. 20 minutes later, she wrapped up. Read chapters 12 through 15 by tomorrow. Be prepared to defend your tactical assessments. Dismissed. The trainees filed out. Hawthorne approached her desk. Impressive. You've got them thinking like operators, not just enforcement officers. That's the goal, sir. How many have you failed this semester? 23. Morrison whistled. Out of how many? 62. That's a 40% failure rate. Yes, sir. The standards are high. If they can't meet them, they shouldn't be in the field. Hawthorne smiled. I'm getting complaints from senators, congressmen, academy board members. They all say the same thing. The standards are too strict. The failure rate is too high. We need to be more flexible. Sarah's expression didn't change. Sir, if you need me to lower the standards, I don't. I'm telling you to ignore the complaints. Every agent you've certified has been exceptional in the field. Everyone you've failed has proven, in retrospect, that you were right to fail them. He paused. You've got full support from the top. Keep doing what you're doing. After they left, Sarah sat at her desk and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The academy wasn't perfect yet. There were still instructors who resented the changes, still political pressure to return to the old ways,
still resistance to the idea that merit should trump connections. But it was better, measurably, demonstrably better. Her phone buzzed. An email from the new trainee roster. She scanned the names, stopped at one entry. Holloway, Marcus A. Admission status, accepted, merit basis. Class start date, next Monday. Sarah stared at the name for a long moment. Then she pulled up his application file. No legacy preference marked, no family connections noted, just his test scores, which were actually good, and his personal statement. She read the statement twice. It was honest, brutally so. He wrote about his failures, his arrogance, his assault on a fellow trainee. He didn't make excuses. He just acknowledged what he'd done and what he'd learned from it. The final paragraph read, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect special treatment. I expect to be held to the same standards as everyone else. And if I fail to meet those standards, I expect to be removed without hesitation. That's what real accountability looks like."
And it's what I should have understood from the beginning. Sarah closed the file. Monday morning, Marcus Holloway would walk into her classroom. He'd see her standing at the front, and he'd have to reconcile the trainee he'd tried to destroy with the captain who now held his future in her hands. She wondered how he'd handle it, whether he'd shrink from the challenge or rise to meet it. Either way, she'd treat him exactly like every other trainee. No harder, no easier, just the standards, just the work. That was what her father had taught her. That was what she'd teach the next generation. Competence required no announcement. Excellence needed no pedigree. And respect was earned through performance, not inherited through legacy. The academy had learned that lesson the hard way, through scandal and reform and institutional upheaval, through the systematic dismantling of a corrupt system and the painful rebuilding of something better. And Sarah Chen, the quiet trainee they'd dismissed, the combat veteran they'd underestimated, the instructor they now trusted to shape the future, had been the catalyst for it all. Not because she'd been louder than the bullies, not because she'd demanded recognition, not because she'd played politics or leveraged connections, but because she'd simply been better. And when the moment came, she'd proven it in a way that couldn't be denied, dismissed, or explained away. That was the real legacy. Not the decorations, or the rank, or the institutional changes. The legacy was every trainee who walked through those doors knowing they'd earned their place. Every agent who graduated understanding that excellence was the only currency that mattered. Every leader who learned that true strength didn't need to announce itself. It just needed to be undeniable when tested. Sarah stood, gathered her materials, and walked out of the classroom. Tomorrow she'd do it again. Train the next generation. Hold the line on standards. Refuse to compromise excellence for comfort. It was the work her father had started, the work that had cost him his life, the work she'd continue until she couldn't anymore, and when her time came, someone else would pick up that standard and carry it forward. Because that was what legacy actually meant. Not what you left behind, but what moved forward because you'd been there. The ghost who'd haunted Quantico's halls had become its conscience. The trainee they'd dismissed had become their standard-bearer. The woman they'd tried to break had rebuilt them from the foundation up. And the lesson, the real, lasting lesson that would echo through every class, every exercise, every moment of doubt, was simple, undeniable, and eternal. Competence doesn't need permission to exist. Respect doesn't require announcement to be real. And excellence doesn't depend on anyone's approval to be absolute. You either had it or you didn't. You either earned it or you didn't, and no amount of legacy, privilege, or political power could fake what genuine merit looked like when put to the test. That was the standard. That was the truth. And that was the legacy Sarah Chen had burned into the heart of an institution that would never forget it.